I'm Gordon Goldsborough, past president of the Manitoba Historical Society, radio and newspaper columnist, and author of books on the neglected, the overlooked, the hidden places from Manitoba's past. Join me in this series as we explore back roads to places that tell great stories about how things used to be and how we have ended up where we are today. This is Abandoned Manitoba. Our crew is on the way to God's Lake in northern Manitoba. One of the largest lakes in the province, God's Lake is a 550-kilometer flight northeast from Winnipeg. We hope that, given the right conditions, we will be able to visit the first hydroelectric generating station in northern Manitoba. Located on the Kanuchuan River that flows into God's Lake, the generating station has been abandoned for over 80 years. To undertake this journey, I bring along my friend Glenn Cook, a retired civil engineer from Manitoba Hydro. I know where the Kanuchuan generating station is located, but I'm not sure by what route we can get there. I hope that Glenn, along with guides provided by our fly-in camp, can find a way to reach the abandoned generating station.
So, Glenn, you've brought along some plans. What are these?
So, I went to our records with it at the shop back at my old hydro, and they had some records of how they had gathered information on the original Kanuchuan generating station. And so we got some plan. This is a plan view that shows us from the top what it looks like, and we can see if we can get there. We got to figure out how we're going to get there today, but we can see the generating station location.
Here, okay.
Yeah, it's got a canal. There's an entrance called an intake, and then that takes portion of the river flow through and drops to the hydroelectric generator. It spins a turbine, and the water comes out through the tail race.
Okay.
And that's just a portion of the flow, and it picks up portion of the head of the river. And then for the excess flow that they don't need for this particular site, I think they sized it for 3 units, 1,900 horsepower each. They only ended up deciding to put in 1, and the balance of the flow goes by a spillway.
In 1934, after discoveries of commercially viable gold deposits in the vicinity of God's Lake, a gold mine was established on Elk Island, a large island in the lake's North Basin. Electricity was needed to power the mine, so a generating station was built through the winter of 1934 and early 1935. The cost of its construction was a staggering $11 million in today's money.
What's interesting especially is that between the generating station and the gold mine, there was something like 40 miles a distance, and they would have therefore had to have a transmission line to transmit the power from the generating station over to the mine. So it'd be interesting to see what, if anything, is remaining of that transmission line.
Our kits are packed and the boats are loaded. The team and I are about to embark on a 3-hour boat ride traversing God's Lake to the site of the Kanuchuan generating station. Along the way, I have asked our guides to make a couple of stops to explore some of the area's mining history. We're on a small island in God's Lake. To the north of us is Elk Island, to the south of us, the mainland. We're standing in the middle of a large metal structure. The question is, what is it? Well, they of course generated the electricity at the Kanuchuan generating station, and they had to get it to the gold mine on Elk Island. The way to do that is with a transmission line. Wherever that transmission line spanned a large body of water, such as the lake, they needed the extra strength that steel provided. So there's a tower over on the south side, there's a tower here, and they would have run the power lines between them. Another intriguing thing that we've noticed is that there are some smaller insulators on these towers, and I wonder if they might be the remains of a telephone system. Because of course, if they were using the power on Elk Island, but generating it kilometers away, they would probably need some sort of communication system to if they needed to say, up the power, we need more power, or, you can slow down the production.
it would make sense that there would be a telephone system. So I'm wondering if those insulators aren't the remains of a telephone system between the mine and the generating station.
After a few minutes checking out the old transmission towers, we are back into the boats on our way to see one of the former gold mines of Elk Island.
I've been told that this was the first mine developed in this area. I have to wonder how they first discovered it. What led them to decide that this was an appropriate spot to search for gold? This is the part that I'm just amazed by. The prospectors, of course, that were traveling through this area in the 1920s and 1930s, they had very primitive technology, and yet they were able to do prospecting in a remote location like this one.
Throughout all of my travels, I see signs of the lives lived by those who went before us. God's Lake is no different. Because of the mine, a community developed on Elk Island. Its inhabitants made a life for themselves and their families in a remote and sometimes harsh environment. The diverse faces of God's Lake reflect a heartiness and can-do attitude to tackle some of nature's most beautiful but unforgiving terrains. The God's Lake gold mine exhausted its gold-bearing ore quickly and closed in 1943 after just 8 years in operation. The mine and its associated generating station were never used again. After leaving the former mine site, we hunker down in the boats for the most arduous part of our journey. As we cross God's Lake, the rain settles in. The trip is the adventure of a lifetime, but it is not for the faint of heart. I think often of how difficult this journey would have been without the motorboats and navigation equipment on which we rely. As rain turns to sunshine, we arrive at the mouth of the Kanuchuan River, a few miles downstream of the generating station. We immediately see the basis for the river's indigenous name. Kanuchuan means long current, and it refers to a series of rapids that occur along the river's course. We will have to leave our boats and walk the rest of the way.
You know, I didn't know what to expect of the terrain that we would encounter when we got here. I didn't think there would be an easy way to get to the generating station. I knew we would have to leave the boats behind because the river is filled with rapids. So I figured, well, okay, we'll have to put up the boats before the rapids and then maybe bushwhack through some forest. But there's actually a nice trail here. And I'm wondering if perhaps this trail goes back to the days of the generating station, because just as we want to have an easy way to get there, they would too. They would have had a road to access the generating station if they needed to do repairs, if they needed to bring in supplies for the people that were staying there. It stands to reason they would have had an access road. In fact, if you look at this, you can actually see it's kind of crowned. It slopes off to the north, it slopes off to the south. I wouldn't be surprised. This road dates back to the 1930s when they built the generating station.
Sometimes karma has a way of catching up to me. At times, that aforementioned trail thickens and the bugs pursue us ferociously.
For a lot of our walk, the trail was well marked and easily walkable, but it's kind of degenerated. You'll notice there's a lot of great big stones here now. The vegetation is more tightly encroaching it. And according to my GPS, we've taken a bit of a turn off of what it shows as the road. So I think we may be a little lost. I think we should go back and see if we can pick up the correct trail that'll take us to the generating station. So we're just gonna walk back a little ways and see if we can't find it. Yeah, I think the trail goes that way.
That almost looks like a trail there.
But that's going the wrong direction. I mean, that's going north. We want to go this way. The river's just over here. So we want to stay along the river. I think we go that way.
Pretty sure that's it on that island right there.
Oh.
Which, if I zoom in, I can't get details.
Yeah, we want to go right. See that tip where it says that little blib there on the right?
That little thing?
That's where we're going. Right there where your finger is. Well, we may have come to the end of the road. It's been an exceptionally wet spring, and as a result, some of the small channels that would have been easily crossable in a normal year are now raging torrents. So it remains to be seen if we're stymied. We're going to do a few more investigations, but it's looking more and more like we may not be able to get to the generating station. And if not, well, we can still send up the drone to have a peek, but we'll wait and see if that's necessary. It's 1.1 kilometer.
Okay, that's within your range.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Yeah.
It's got about a 3.5 kilometer range. So we could easily get the drone over there.
I mean, if worst case scenario, one of us could cross that creek and get wet.
Oh, I don't know about that, Glenn.
Well, I guess what one of the options I was thinking, Gord, is you would wade out in the water at the outlet, in the slower water. But again, you're into the fast water of Kanuchuan. So the whole thing becomes complicated.
Yeah,
it's risky.
It's risky.
Yeah.
As we contemplate our options, safety becomes paramount to the discussion. I will send up my drone to see if I can get a view from above of the former generating station. As the drone zooms upward, I can see the swirling river water that blocks our way and the dense forest that separates us from the generating station. From above, I can see abandoned equipment used to construct the station, including a large drag line that is being swallowed up by the forest. Will I be able to find the generating station? I will know shortly. Suddenly, our destination comes into sight. As you can see here, the building that once enclosed the mechanical parts of the generating station is gone, exposing the hardware, including the top of the generator, to the elements. Yet, despite the passage of over 80 years since the plant was constructed, with little or no maintenance in the ensuing time, swirling current at the downstream side demonstrates that water is still flowing past the station's turbine. Therefore, it is conceivable that the long-abandoned Kanuchuan generating station, small as it is by modern standards, could still be made to produce electricity.
Good boy. Well, we didn't make it quite all the way to the generating station, but thankfully, because of the drone, we were able to get there all the way. We were able to see the condition that it's in. It has sustained a lot of damage. But along the way, we've learned a lot about the site as well. We've learned, for example, that there was a road to the station. You know, it makes sense because they would have had to have a way of bringing supplies to the men that were operating the generating station. They would have had to have repairs made. They would have had to brought in materials to do that. So here, for example, I bet you this little tracked vehicle was part of that. You know, it would have been sort of an all-terrain vehicle back in the 1930s that could navigate the rough terrain. And actually, over in the trees over there, there is a grader that would have been pulled along behind, maybe behind this little tracked vehicle perhaps, to maintain that road. So the area, well, it's reverted back to nature. It's got lots of water, as we can see this year. I'm sorry we didn't get to see it, but at least with the help of a drone, with that eye in the sky, we were able to meet our objective. We saw Manitoba's first northern hydroelectric generating station.